Diana.
Hello.
Hi, Albus. Hello, Malvina.
Hi. Hold on, I'm going to make you louder.
Hi, Pat.
Hello, Pat and Ted and Pat.
Hi there. Ted will be here in a minute.
We played a great version of, what is it called? The River?
The river is here.
The River is Here.
Oh,
It was really jazzy, I thought.
Sheila found one on the internet. It's really jazzy.
Yeah.
Different rhythm.
Had a Celtic feel to it, and the tin whistle and all kinds of stuff. It was very nice.
I'll have to go and listen to it.
Yep. It's at the end. Just fast forward through everything else, and it's at the end.
Yeah, I didn't get up early enough this morning to get to church, so
Right.
I'm
You have
starting
to
my day.
travel so far.
Say again?
You have to travel so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's Patty connecting to audio about
Hi, Pam.
Pam. This Pam Stevens is something. I mean, last week was her first time ever on Zoom, and now she's just zooming everywhere.
Oh, good.
I had 8 Zoom things last week.
Wow. What did you do? 8 different things.
Suddenly the world has discovered Zoom. I'm sorry I wasn't with the class last week, but I had a brain lapse. I went outside gardening after church and totally forgot.
You're going to have to get yourself a pillow, Kathy. I'm tired of looking at your nose. Oh, there.
If I stretch, I can.
I'm happy to see Diana this time instead of a purple screen.
Yeah.
Oh, Diana. Yes.
I'll be right back.
Can any of you see more than 4 people at a time?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, how do you do that?
They
I
just-
can only see 4 at a time.
I don't know. Mine just come on and the pictures keep getting smaller.
Oh, Marcia.
I think,
Hi everybody.
Hi, Marcia.
Pat, if you
Oh,
go
Diana,
to
you're
along
right.
the top and click on gallery view,
Okay, along the top.
there's like 9 little white squares in a circle.
Oh gosh,
And
no,
it says-
I don't see them.
Mine doesn't have that.
No, I don't see anything up at the top except a camera on the left, a zoom in the middle, and leave.
All right, well, I don't,
I'm
mine
on a
has,
tablet, see? I'm on a
Everybody's
tablet.
Slightly different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so am I.
Oh, can you see more than 4, whoever that was?
Marcia.
I can see 9.
Oh, see, I can only see 4 at a time. Well, anyways, I'll figure it out.
So when you go up, when you take your cursor up to the top,
Yes.
it doesn't, when you get to the black border, it doesn't show something that says speaker view?
No, I have nothing up there except those 3 items I just said.
Okay.
Down the bottom, I have a mute, stop video, share, participants, and more, but that's it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll read up on it.
All right, and Sochol said she was going to be a little late again, and she won't be having her camera. So we just have to trust that she's there when she logs in.
Okay.
Shall we start?
Let's do it.
All right. In just a general question, what did you guys think of this second section?
I liked it.
I enjoyed it, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it was really,
Gabriel is the angel that bridges from the Old Testament to the New Testament. It's really interesting. I never heard that before.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you here later on the day.
Would someone like to start by reading the first reading on page 53 from Judges? It's a long one. If there are no volunteers, I'll do it.
I'll do it. That's okay. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abizarite, as his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, you mighty warrior." Gideon answered him, "But sir, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all the wonderful deeds that our ancestors recounted to us, saying, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has cast us off, given us into the hand of Midian." Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. I hereby commission you." He responded, "But sir, how can I deliver Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord said to him, "But I will be with you. You shall strike down the Midianites, every one of them." And he said to them, "If now I have found favor with you, then show me a sign that it is you who speak with me. Do not depart from here until I come to you, and bring out my present, as I set it before you." And he said, "I will stay until you return." So Gideon went into his house and prepared a kid, and unleavened cakes from an ephah of flour. The meat he put into a basket, and the broth he put into a pot, and brought them to him under the oak and presented them. The angel of God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened cakes and put them on this rock and pour out the broth." And he did so. And the angel of the Lord reached out the tip of the staff that was in his hand and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes. And fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. And the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. Then Gideon perceived that it was an angel of the Lord. And Gideon said, "Help me, Lord God, for I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, "Peace be to you. Do not fear. You shall not die."
So the author talks about how God wants to partake with us in a meal with the fire, with the angel consuming the food in fire, and also how we take communion and we are part of God that way. And I thought the use of fire was interesting. So my question is, why does God use fire to consume the food, and why does he consume it? Is it just that he wants to partake with us or be with us?
My reaction is, what a waste. I mean, here the life of this poor animal is wasted, and this food. When I'm cooking, every scrap of food gets eaten, not thrown away. and I wonder why God does this, just deliberately wastes the food that is so essential to these people.
Well, I think that God is asking him to make a sacrifice, because the author here says that that at this time, in such a period of starvation, to slaughter a kid would be almost risking your life.
Yes.
So God is saying, okay, I'm going to show you, but you're going to have to come forward and show me your sincerity as well. And so I think that this is the interchange that takes place. And then we have a long history of sacrifice of animals among the early Israelites, as a means of reconciliation with God. So I think it's perfectly fitting. But to go out and take one of my own animals and slaughter the thing and say, well, okay, you say so, I think that would be it'd be a great mark of sincerity.
Well, Abraham was willing to do it to his son.
Absolutely.
And I do think that in those times, the animal sacrifice that was required because you didn't have Jesus then. So you needed to show the sacrifice somehow. And then once Jesus came, you no longer need the sacrifice because he was the sacrifice.
Yes.
What do you make of the use of fire? Because with Moses in the previous chapters, that's the fire got our attention or got Moses's attention. And then here the angel uses fire to consume the food. So is there something otherworldly about fire? Or is it simply something that people, or all animals are like, ooh, fire.
Well, here the author of the book answers it. It's what in the paragraph that starts, what is it about fire that is deemed otherworldly? The process of combustion that changes solid things, that produces fire, changes solid things into dust and smoke. Fire produces heat. It dances and throws off light. To harness fire is to control warmth, prepare food, and sanitize wounds. It is powerful and unpredictable and wonderful. Perhaps it's little wonder that fire is often seen as a sign from heaven.
The Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
Well, as in the case of the burning bush, Moses seeing a burning bush, and many other occasions in the Bible.
I also think that we're the only species of animals that uses fire that I know of that we create fire. And so I'm wondering if that has also something to do with it, if that's like a separate gift from God. All right, so let's move on to chapter 13. Would someone like to volunteer to read it? The Bible passage.
I'll do it again if you like.
No, that's okay. I can do it this time.
Okay.
Melissa, I'll read it. This is Ted.
Oh, hi, Ted.
Oh boy, Ted's going to read. That's good.
The one who leaves the presence of God. One day, the heavenly beings came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down on it." The Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil." Then Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a fence around him and his house and all that he has? On every side, you have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand now and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." the Lord said to Satan, "Very well. All that he has is in your power. Only do not stretch out your hand against him." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord.
So the author later says, I can remember the real influence of dark angels, the demons, the adversaries. They exist and they can influence us, but even our awareness of their process can diminish their influence. Shine light on them and they dissolve in its brightness. So I thought it was curious that the author also brings up that God wasn't aware of Satan until he kind of came into his presence with the angels. So what do you guys think is the influence of the dark angels? And does God see them? Does God know where they are?
This is Ted. I think God, as we know, is omniscient and omnipresent and all-knowing and all of that. So he knows everything. So he knows where Satan is. He knows where Satan's minions are. He, as we have said, he allows things to happen despite our questioning that action. Note that though God's, in this symbolic story, allows Satan to severely harm Job and his family, God is right there. He's watching the whole thing, like on a Zoom meeting. But notice he protected Job. Job personally was not harmed. This is an ancient story, perhaps not the most ancient one, but perhaps the most ancient one written in the Old Testament. And as the story unfolds, as we go through this, maybe we'll remember that this is another part of the Hebrew faith story, and their understanding of good and evil, God and the devil, nature and why bad things happen to good people. I think it's a remarkable story given its apparent antiquity as to when it was written. It was written about a time, an ancient time, regardless of the chronology of when it was actually put down on paper.
So, the author talks a lot about awareness. And last time she talked about with the story of Moses being aware of the burning bush. And then here she asks, how do we become more aware of the dark angels if they do exist? And how do we become more aware of them so that we can kind of mitigate their influence, perhaps on us, perhaps on others?
Why do we need to mitigate the influence of angels?
Well, I'm more wondering about the influence of dark angels.
Oh,
So
dark
like
angels. Okay.
Satan, where you
Satanic angels.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think for starters, we need to be aware of them, and that's not easy because they're very clever. When I was a teenager, I was a member of Job's Daughters.
Oh, I was too.
Yes, I see other Job's Daughters there, which is the Masonic arm for young girls, and we would act out the whole story of Job every time. That's what we did at the meetings, and I always had lots of questions about it. But nobody was answering questions. We just recited it. And Diana, I see you nodding. You were a Job's daughter.
Yeah, I was a
too.
Job's daughter.
Yes.
Temple 146 in Chula Vista.
Yes. So, yeah, I always had a lot of questions about this story. there's a book in the church library called Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People? And I think that's a basic theological question. Why do bad things happen to good people? And where are the angels that are supposed to be guarding us when these bad things are happening? It's a difficult question.
So Patty, what did the book say? Because the author in this book also, she asks the question at least 3 times, and I've been avoiding asking it because I don't like it, but why does God allow us to suffer? What did that particular book say, if you remember?
Well, it seems that God has given even the angels free will, it says here. And free will is the phrase that people use to explain even things like the Holocaust. If God hadn't allowed us to do bad things, then what? If God hadn't allowed us, given us the free will, we would have been just like puppets, or just Dumbos that just sort of walked around like dopes. To be intelligent and come to God of our own free will, we have to have free will to do that.
Yeah, we have to make the choice.
Yes. Yes, and he gives us the choice.
Yeah.
He gives us it,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And the question that I come back to whenever I think about this is, God gave us free will, so then why do we allow others to suffer? Because we can do our part as well. So why don't we always step up and do what we can?
Why do we what?
Let people suffer, I think is what she was saying.
Yes. As in this time, we're in a time where bad things are happening, but we are seeing all kinds of beautiful things where people step up to the plate and do good things to help other people. Deeds of amazing goodness in this time. And as you just said, what can we do to help, when bad things are around?
All right, let's move on to the art feature.
No. Let's stay with this.
Oh, you want to keep going? Go ahead, Dale.
When you talk about dark angels, one of the things that have occurred to me is that there's such a thing as evil in the world.
Absolutely.
And it could be the opposite of good, which we would consider to be God. But I think you don't have to look too far to see that there is evil existing in the world. If that could be equated with the dark angels, then I think that this is something that you have to deal with. God gives us this free will, but it's how we respond to this evil. Job responded to evil in a certain way, and maybe this is a lesson for us. There's a lot of questioning about evil, and Job's friends are saying, well, you must have really screwed up because you're in real trouble here now, and what did you do wrong? But Job resists all this, and he's affirming that there's evil happening here, and so we don't have a lot of control on. Well, we do have some control over evil. There's certain things that we can do as a Christian community, but in terms of action. But there are also things that you have to do to recognize it, to help. If you can recognize it, you can respond to it well, and help prevent it from consuming you.
Mm-hmm.
So I've thought about this idea of evil quite a lot, and I think it's a real. I mean, this is my own opinion. I think it's a real presence, and again, one of these dark angels from Satan. So, but it does give you hope because on the opposite side there's God. So I view it as a real important point, something that we have to recognize, the real true existence of evil.
This is Ted again. As people have been speaking, it makes me think of something I've thought about, and that is awareness. I personally think that being busy all the time, or looking to be busy all the time, or be involved in 16 different things is a trap, because it takes me away from quiet time, seriously speaking, naps to regenerate myself, to reflecting, to reading a Bible commentary, to attending a Bible study. So I need to make time. I need to be aware that making time to stay connected to what I know is right within the Christian community, that protects me from evil, but it also allows me to be more aware of what's going on around me and with other people. So then I can say something to someone appropriately, that, hey, are you sure this is the right thing you want to do? A polite way of saying, you're about to screw up. Aren't you paying attention to what's right and wrong? Anyway, then I want someone else like Dale or Pam to say, Ted, what are you talking about? That doesn't sound very nice, or something like that, so that someone is watching out for me. So this awareness word is very important to me to answer part of the author's questions and others that you have brought up, Maliva's brought up. Anyway, those are some of my current thoughts.
I think that we lose the track of the fact that when you were asking before about what we can do about all this evil, I think we lose track of the fact that each one of us as an individual can do what individuals would do. In other words, if you see a thing that you want to correct or something, you need see someone that needs help or something, that you do that, you help them. And together, collectively, since we are all part of the same group, then in effect, we're all doing something against evil. It's just that we're doing it in individual ways. But when you put it together, then we're all doing something against evil, as long as each of us is trying to do what we can do. I mean, we can't solve world problems, but we can do individual good things that help other people. So you have to think of things as a big collective, a big group, rather than individual, I think. Otherwise, because individually, I don't think we can do a whole heck of a lot against evil. But together, we can.
Yeah, but together.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the key word, yes. Oh, as a librarian, as a former librarian, I always come up with, when there are difficult questions, I always come up with a book. And I am sitting here thinking about C.S. Lewis's The Screw Tape Letters, which illustrates the cunning of evil, and it's very entertaining at the same time. We seem to have a fascination with evil. There have been many, many artworks about evil. Not so many visuals, but many literary works, But we all need to get to know, or to make decisions, or to point the finger at evil when it comes our way, And that's kind of, you get a lot of feedback from other people when you do that. It's a tricky thing to do. Father, can you see how that pointing the finger at evil could go sour on a person? Yes.
Of course. And I also was wondering which finger you'd be pointing at. Well, I was thinking earlier this week when we found out, when Kathy and Steve called on Monday and said that the church had been vandalized, I was really down. And it just felt like someone had put a dagger in our hearts. And yet the response of people on the vestry and others in the congregation upon finding out, asking what they could do and assuring us that their prayers were with us, and then to find out that the organ which had been tipped over was not damaged, and that at least so far the damage is pretty minimal, a couple of screens and a piece of fabric. And we'll find out more on Tuesday, but we'd already been told we can't go to our physical place and we cannot worship from there. And then to find out and to walk in, and those pictures that we shared with you really didn't do it justice, because you saw just little bits, little, like a chapter at a time, and when you looked at the whole totality of it, it just looked horrible. And then I thought, well, gosh, they could have started a fire. They could have slashed the pews. They could have, and I've seen this before, they could have used bodily wastes inside the building and done things with them, because that's not unusual. Lots of things could have been done that weren't done. And so I think that even when evil manifests itself, I do believe that God's angels are still there. And maybe they don't stop the entire act of evil, but they help to make it less, and they help to make our responses more, so that even out of evil can come good things. And so I do believe that, and I think we've seen a small example of it just this week.
I have always heard and thought that evil is the absence of God. So when you perceive that something is evil, praying really helps. Trying to get the presence of God to come. I think Satan, it says in here, Satan uses his freedom and chooses to leave and exit the presence of God. When he notices there's a little leak somewhere, he can get in, that God's not there. I think that's tricky. So the more we pray and try to be in the presence of God, I think that helps with the evil.
Sure.
Yeah, I think for me, it's also how I try to fight evil on a personal level is, how do I respond with love when something bad does happen? Because I always think of Presiding Bishop Michael Curry's words that if it's not about love, then it's not about God. And I always, it's a hard thing to always respond in love. And what Patty was talking about, what's the draw to evil? And I think that it's not necessarily a draw. It's that it's kind of a visceral response. If I've been hurt, how, I want to respond. But how do you respond in love and not with evil? And this fight, the internal fight, that's maybe perhaps where our good angels or our light angels come in and help us.
I like to think of it as what Abraham Lincoln said, our better angels. And that always encourages me. But so I can make my parting shot at this, to give us something to think about. I'm looking here at the Lord's Prayer that we prayed this morning, and I think that there's a real closeness here, and I wonder what Jesus had in mind when his disciples said, how do we pray? And he gave them the Lord's Prayer. But if you go down here, it says, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This must have been on his mind. And as I have seen some other translations of the Lord's Prayer, it says, bring us not to the time of trial, but deliver us from the evil one. So you could almost take those two sentences right there and sum up Job. You know, don't bring us to the time of trial, as Job was brought to the time of trial. And deliver us from the evil one, as he was subjected to the evil one. So it's a big subject. We could pretty much go on and all day, but nevertheless, I thought that was significant. And I hadn't even thought about that before until I just happened to think about how it's in the Lord's Prayer. Obviously, that was something that concerned Jesus a lot. So there's a lot of significance here.
I'm glad I brought it up because I was trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
Job
That
in
was an
general,
evil
I try to
temptation.
avoid Job. It bothers me. But the next the art feature is also about Job.
Oh, no.
But I don't have any questions about it other than which one of these images really speaks to you, and why. And I don't know, does everyone have the book? Do you want me to show you the pictures?
I have the book.
Yeah.
I thought it was fascinating because if it were me, I would have never gotten the way she interprets the paintings. I guess I'm not good at art, I guess, but I thought it was very fascinating the way she told us what the painting was about and pointed out the different items in the painting. I just was really taken with that, and then I would study it and figure it out, but I would have never realized what the painting was if she hadn't specifically pointed out all these things about the paintings. I just thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, it's funny for me. The one I like visually is not the one I like fully because of her explanation. So the first one with the plate, when she writes, "We are reminded by Job that others suffer in privation, even as we sit to eat in prosperity." And so, I mean, that's a heck of a thing to eat off of, but.
Yeah.
You're out.
Yeah, true.
I thought
But
it
I mean, visually it doesn't speak to me, but when I look at it and I see what she's saying that way.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting in figure 9 that the characters are wearing more modern dress.
Yeah.
And the other ones that are trying to be more biblically correct. It's interesting. So perhaps the story of Job goes through the ages and
Yeah.
The fact that Job is naked is
yeah.
surprising.
Yeah, and everybody else is dressed.
Yes. That's very strange.
He's lost everything.
Even
Yeah.
his clothes.
Yeah.
Including its clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm connecting in and out, so I'm only getting part of this. So just so you know, that's
Okay.
What's that?
Does anyone else have a favorite of these images?
Well, I would say that figure 10 is certainly presents a very nice dung heap. It one of the graphic ones.
Again, he's naked.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, if you read Job, and I haven't read it its entirety in a long, long time. My son David has a thing about that. He goes back and talks about Job all the time. I don't know why but nevertheless, he's a little bit of a New Old Testament scholar in his own way. But the thing is if you read Job and listen, and you read the description of his misery, you don't even have to have a real imagination to picture what that was like. You know, dogs licking his sores, and and laying in a dung heap, and all this other kind of thing. So where this really, really descriptive. So some of these images here, maybe don't even do it justice. In terms of his real misery.
Well, this
So
is Ted again. I just think seriously that having these pictures just adds in many ways to the insight and to remember key aspects of the lessons that the author is giving. So for me, as well as I think we all know, pictures, word pictures as well as literal pictures help in memory and understanding. So I'm all for pictures to help me better understand the Bible.
Ted, you make a really good point. When I was in service stationed in Germany, I visited some of the cathedrals, and I can't recall which one it was. Strasbourg, I think it was. We were visiting there, and there was all kinds. But up above the altar and around the church, there were all these biblical stories, and there was also things too that kind of like, I guess the sermons were long, and there was things that kind of like keep the people amused, during the time that the priest was holding the service. But nevertheless, you make a really good point, because a lot of people in those days could not read or write.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way they learn.
If it wasn't in a picture, if they were to hear the story from the priest and be able to see the picture, then they could better understand it. So you make an excellent point right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like this paragraph. To conceive of a guardian angel of any kind is to remember what it felt like to be held as a tiny child, to relax into the arms of someone much larger and wiser, someone who knows you and accepts your vulnerabilities, someone who loves you wholly and unconditionally. Yeah. That's only a protector from God could comfort us in such a way. And maybe that's a good way to tell evil from good. Does it make you feel comforted, and you just feel it's right and good?
And this one is from the Guardian Angels chapter, for he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. They shall bear you in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And what I like about this one is that it doesn't say that the angel is going to keep you from dashing your foot against the stone, but just that he's going to bear you in his hands. And Dale, last time you said that she didn't say much about guardian angels.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I thought they really short changed us there on the guardian angels. That's the one I really hope maybe five or 6 pages about, but just got 2. I was really looking forward to hearing more about that.
Yeah, I think that the Bible doesn't actually say very much on guardian angels, and that's why it was difficult for her to kind of pull a lot out of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And because she doesn't have very much about it, I don't have any questions about guardian angels for you guys, but I do want to share a story from the Midrash. And the Midrash is it's like stories passed down from generation to generation in the Jewish culture, and then the rabbis got together and wrote it down. And it's about it doesn't say that it's Moses's guardian angel, but the way that the story is presented, it sure seems like it is. So they have a way to describe why Moses had a stutter. And the story is that Pharaoh was very suspicious of Moses, even when he was a little boy. And he kept thinking that, oh, he just wants my gold, he just wants my riches. And so the story goes that Pharaoh placed burning coals in one bowl in front of Moses and gold and riches in another bowl. And he was trying to prove that Moses wanted his things and he shouldn't be there. And when baby Moses reached for the gold, his angel pushed his arm aside, and Moses grabbed the coal and put it in his mouth, and that's why he had a stutter.
Interesting story.
Yeah. And for the longest time, I thought that was in the Bible because, you know, when you're a kid and they teach you that, and then for years I was searching. I was like, where is this story?
Yeah,
I think
the closest we get is Isaiah 6:8, with the angel putting the coal in Isaiah's mouth, as you remember.
So let's actually read that one. Would anybody like to volunteer? It's on page 71.
I can read it.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
It's close.
Seraphim, in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw, am I reading the right thing? Okay. I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory.
So that, again, is the one that Ted was just talking about with the coal. And in the same chapter, she talks about St. Francis and how after he had an encounter with an angel, his hands and feet and sides bore wounds where he had the stigmata. So my question for you guys is, why do you think that after certain meetings with angels, people somehow end up injured? I mean, they had, there's this story with St. Francis, and then Isaiah with the coal, and then there was Jacob with his hip. And I personally don't have an answer for you guys, but I don't know what to make of it.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, if you look at this chapter, she says that St. Francis had a vision of a seraph at the end of his life. And after that encounter, he had the stigmata, so his hands and feet and side bled.
Yes.
And then when, in an earlier, I think it was Jacob, he wrestled with an angel in the previous chapters, and his hip was hurt after that. And then in this reading, the angel put coal in his mouth. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good question. My immediate thought is so much in the Bible is symbolic, and I think to me the coal, the stigmata, the wrestling with the angel, and the injury. The injury is somewhat secondary to me, but what it represents is the encounter with God, the cleansing, and faith. All of those are wrapped together. The cleansing of Isaiah's sins, that he can speak and he can share about God, that Jacob is strengthened in his faith and understanding, And St. Francis clearly moves spiritually closer to God with this remarkable, miraculous experience. I think that's what it means to me right now.
Rather than harmful, I think. In other words, I don't think, what Ted, I think, is saying is it's not, we shouldn't see the harm in it, but perhaps the good in it, rather than the fact that it strikes us as being harmful if you're bleeding, for heaven's sake. But I think what he's saying is that it's supposed to represent the good things and not the bad. That's all I got.
I think of it as an outward and visible sign that
Yes.
the person was really visited by an angel. Because if
Yes.
they didn't have any physical sign, they could have thought they just dreamed it, or it really didn't happen.
Yes.
But the one that comes to my mind is Zechariah, John the Baptist's father. Remember, I think he was either struck dumb or blind until he named the name John. And then he regained his sight or his speech. I forget which one it was.
His speech.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, because
He was told by an angel that he had to name him John, and I think you were supposed to name it after the grandfather or something in the custom. So to name him John was not following tradition.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point, Diana.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually this next one with the art feature is that image with Isaiah and the seraphim. Is there an image here that you guys really like?
I don't like any of the images. Really scary to me. But in trying to, again, apply my filter of symbology, I'd like to put a positive spin in saying the mighty power of God is incomprehensible to me. And so the author or the artist has tried to display the power and awesomeness and through size and through all kinds of symbolism with eyes and wings and faces and things. So that's a way of trying to impart something that very difficult to do in words when we're talking about describing God or God's reasoning or God's works.
Yeah.
But sometimes it comes across as sort of comic strip. I've tried to make the middle figure in the top panel, figure 15, this odd, which the author of our book says is a hand. I can't make that a hand. I can't use that thing,
I think it's facing down. It's like,
Yeah, facing down with only two fingers, a thumb and two fingers that are stretched out.
It looks like a nose to me.
Yeah. Whatever it is, it's very odd.
Yes.
And fits in with what you were saying about the strangeness of God, essentially. Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed by the color red on figures 17 and 18. The angels are red.
Yeah.
To show the symbolism of fire, I guess.
Mm.
Oh, here.
But they're not red.
They're orange and red, I think.
yeah.
I think that's a good observation, Kathy.
Yeah.
So we
And
always
I was
say
struck by
white, right?
Right. White.
White.
We normally see them in white.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was struck by the color blue in figure 19. Because it's very vivid and for a hymn book.
Really? I don't understand the A though. It's supposed to be a figure A or something.
This is,
Like an alpha.
Yeah, but
it's an unusual script, I think.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
See, maybe something similar to this.
Oh,
Maybe.
I get it.
Highly ornate.
Yeah. And so,
Using, I've stumbled over that.
so this next one for chapter 16, Ezekiel describes angels that he sees. And they're very different looking. Would anybody like to read it? It's a bit long.
No.
No, okay.
I can read it again. That's okay. Let me give it a try.
Okay.
Real fast.
In the 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day of the month, I was among the exiles by the river Shabar. The heavens were opened, and I saw visions of God. As for the appearance of their faces, 4 had the face of a human being, the face of a lion on the right side, the face of an ox on the left side, and the face of an eagle. Such were their faces. Their wings were spread out above. Each creature had 2 wings, each of which touched the wing of another, while 2 covered their bodies. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the earth beside the living creatures, one each of the 4 of them. As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl, and the 4 had the same form, their construction being something like a wheel within a wheel. When they moved in any of the 4 directions without veering as they moved. Their rims were tall and awesome, for the rims of all 4 were full of eyes all around. When the living creatures moved, the wheels moved beside them. When the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose. Wherever the Spirit would go, they went, and the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When they moved, the others moved. When they stopped, the others stopped. And when they rose from the earth, the wheels rose along with them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Over the heads of the living creatures was something like a dome, shining like crystal, spread out above their heads. Under the dome, their wings were stretched out straight, one toward another, and each of the creatures had 2 wings covering its body. When they moved, I heard the sound of their wings like the sound of mighty waters, like the thunder of the Almighty, a sound of tumult like the sound of an army. When they stopped, they let down their wings, and there came a voice from above the dome over their heads. When they stopped, they let their wings down. When I saw it, I fell on my face.
So what do you all make of the description of angels here? Have you ever, because personally, when I think of angels, I don't think about spinning balls and
What this passage reminds me of is the spiritual wheel in a wheel way up in the middle of the air, you know, the song, not visual imagery. Yeah, it's a good old spiritual.
So has anyone ever thought of angels in this way, in this kind of different way, I suppose?
No.
It's creepy.
I kind of, I don't necessarily, I just think if I imagine that, I wouldn't think angel.
Yeah,
I'd be running in the opposite direction. That's what I'd be doing. Gee.
So the author asks, what makes Ezekiel able to see these images? And is our lack of openness to the divine caused by our reliance on our other senses? So is he somehow more open on?
He probably hasn't seen as many pictures of angels as we have.
Yeah. I agree.
We've been seeing pictures of angels since we were little kids. So, you know, to see them described as wheels is kind of, but maybe he hadn't had that experience.
So then I wonder for us, how do we disconnect from kind of this knowledge that we think we have when it might be way different? How do we kind of connect into the actual divine without our brains interfering?
I like your question, and we might remember individually what we've heard about our 5 senses, or maybe we even have 6, and that our mind has so much more capability than we have realized or that we have tried to use. I think, again, my word awareness, if we're aware of our ability to smell and to touch and to feel and to see and to hear and to know, then I think we can be more in tune to different ways of perceiving God or listening to the Holy Spirit. I think that's real important, at least as I say it, as an answer to your question. How can we be more aware through, as you said, our 5 or 6 or more senses, and not rely on our mind so much?
I think the last paragraph in that chapter tells you, you know, about vision and what you can get yourself to get into a form or a mode where you can see more or connect more with God. But I think Ezekiel had mental problems myself. But, you know, what do I know?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not important to personify angels so much or visualize them. Maybe we should just sense that they're around us all the time.
I agree.
I agree.
How we think of them, how we see them.
I would agree. And I think that's kind of where the awareness of God in general comes in. Is that so that has actually been an hour, and I don't want to keep you guys for longer, but when we didn't get to the last few chapters, and I was going to try to show you guys a clip, because there's this cool feature on Zoom that you can actually share your screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm not going to show you the clip, but I will, in the chat, I'll put the link to it, if I can find the chat.
So when we meet next week, do we take up with chapter 17?
I think we can just start at 21 and then go through.
I'd like to. Can we stretch this out a little bit? In other words, can we?
Oh, you want to keep? We can try to keep going if you guys all have time.
I'd like to do that because I thought last week it was too much to try to go through, you know, in the period of time that we've allowed. So
Yes.
I personally would like to stretch it out if we can.
Me too. Me
I
too.
And when you say stretch it out, do you mean make the sessions longer or have more sessions?
Well, I think
More
add
sessions.
more sessions would be a good idea to my
Yeah.
mind.
I agree.
Yeah, I
I agree.
personally agree with that.
That could be difficult for some of us because we're pretty busy going into summer.
We have cruises and things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And little people. Here are the little people.
Well, whatever. I'm enjoying it, and I think we try to push too much into the one time frame that we've done.
I wouldn't like to skip Gabriel. I think Gabriel's really important.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to skip anything.
So it sounds like most of us are saying we'd be willing to go on a few more sessions,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
that the hour time frame is pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
But I would personally like to pick up with 17 again, even if we don't have many comments to make. But Gabriel is one of 2 in the New Testament or the Bible that is mentioned. As I remember rereading, Gabriel and Michael.
Yeah.
The Apocrypha has some, and other translations, like the Roman Catholic Bible has some, but I just agree with Kathy's comment. We ought to talk about Gabriel a little bit.
All right.
Is that okay with you, Malvina?
Yeah, absolutely. So then we'll just, in one session, we'll get in as far as we can, or we want to, and then we'll just pick up from where we left off. Sound good?
I like that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Good.
I haven't seen anything in here about Marvin,
About
the archangel Marvin.
what?
Who is he?
Well, he's kind of the unknown angel.
What's
You're
his
talking about like Olive, the other reindeer?
Yes, Olive
Holiday.
was one of the other reindeer, and Marvin is one of the other archangels.
All right, you can talk about that, Father, next time.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey,
Yeah, you
Pam,
can
I'm
inform
kidding.
us about Marvin.
He doesn't.
Marvin.
Come on, tell us about Marvin.
What did you
Tell us.
decide about the sessions? Because I dropped out during that period, or will somebody put it in a,
Let her tell him.
So we are going
Email or-
to, we're just going to go as far as we can for the hour, and then we're going to stop, and we'll just keep doing that until the end of the book. So we won't necessarily
oh, okay,
Good.
okay.
But Marcia, since you were named
Yeah.
after him, you are detailed to go ahead and do some extra study on Marvin, the archangel.
Yeah, well, I missed that.
We'll have to pick it up.
Actually, the image on page 77, I kept trying to figure out what Marcia meant, because it says Martian.
Yeah, I know. I saw that too.
And then I figured out it's actually Martialis.
Oh,
There was the
okay.
two words, they were just separated.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
What page?
Page
Page
77.
77.
in the artwork.
Yeah, and the same thing, what is Ria? And then I realized, oh, Maria.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Malvina. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Malvina.
Thank you all.
Good job.
thank you,
Marcia?
Malvina.
Thank you all for sharing.
Marcia, even if you're in Phoenix next Sunday, you can still tune in. Marcia's frozen. So,
Yes.
He is frozen.
okay.
All right.
Be safe, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Bye, Diana.
Bye.
Diana.
Yeah, it was so nice to see you. So nice to see you today.
Yeah.
Bye.
And wasn't it Ted and Pat's kind of nudging that helped you get a camera and a microphone?
Oh, I guess.
Yeah.
Plus, I was hoping that this was all going to be very temporary, but it looks like it's going to go on forever. So
No.
That's okay.
No, we won't let it go on forever,
Yeah.
Right.
Diana. We won't let it go on forever.
well, I have a feeling that after this, people aren't going to want to drive to come to vestry meetings, and we're going to end up having them like this forever. So
Well, that could be.
That might be a good thing.
Yeah.
so I better join.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
good weeks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
God
Bye-bye.
bless.
Bye.
Bye.